Being alone is something that many of us resist, but actually it's quite healthy to spend some time alone. Whether you simply happen to find yourself alone due to circumstances, or whether you set aside time to spend alone, either way we can use this opportunity to know ourselves more deeply, more authentically. You see, when we're constantly surrounded by others, it's very challenging to know yourself as you truly are, and it's very challenging to be authentic. This is because other people are always very busy telling you who you are or who they'd like you to be. Sometimes this is quite obvious, but much of the time the influence may be so subtle that we don't even notice. Most of us want to be accepted by others. We want their approval. And this influences so many aspects of our personality and character. Though we may not be aware of it, we're constantly trying to win the acceptance and approval of others. And this influences our behavior. It influences the way we talk, the way we dress, what kind of music we listen to, what kind of hobbies and interests we engage in, our lifestyle, our political, philosophical, and religious beliefs, and so many other aspects of our personality. Our entire personality may be influenced in this way. In other words, the person we think we are may be a total fabrication based entirely on trying to please others. When it really comes down to it, most of us are so busy playing a character that we don't really know ourselves at all. Everything we do is in order to win the approval of others, which means it isn't really authentic. It isn't who we really are. It's an act, a performance. And because we play that role consistently, even we mistake it for who we are. But when we're alone, there's no one to impress, no one to judge us, no one to approve or disapprove, which means we have the freedom to be authentic. We have the freedom to be ourselves. But unfortunately, we may spend so little time alone that even when we do, we don't know how to drop the character. It's as if you've been wearing a mask for so long that it becomes stuck. It's difficult to remove it. Or maybe you don't even realize that you're wearing a mask. Maybe you've been wearing it for so long that you don't perceive it as something separate from who you are. Or perhaps we resist being alone entirely, and so we never really utilize that time. Instead, we give all of our energy to escaping our aloneness, trying to get away from ourselves, trying to find others to engage with in order that we don't have to be alone. Or we use that time to prepare for when we'll be in the company of others again. And so, while we're alone, we spend that time rehearsing our character, perfecting our performance. But what I'm suggesting here is that we utilize our time alone to really discover ourselves, to remove the mask, to drop the performance, to step out of the character, and to stand naked before the mirror. I'm talking about seeing yourself as you really are, without all the pretensions. I'm talking about self-reflection and introspection. I'm talking about allowing yourself to be as you are, with all of your flaws and imperfections, with all of your limitations and inadequacies, all of your blemishes, your fears and insecurities, your weaknesses, your doubts, all the things that you try so desperately to hide from others, to allow all of that to be exposed and to accept oneself in spite of it. We often hear the advice to just be yourself, or to be true to who you are, but it's a very challenging thing when we're constantly surrounded by others, and all the more challenging when we don't even know ourselves, when we're so accustomed to playing a character that we fall into the illusion of mistaking that character for who we are. But when we're alone, we can utilize that time to discover who we are beneath that false persona, beneath all the layers of false identification. Even when we're alone, there may be all sorts of illusions about who we are. We've come to identify with so many things, so many beliefs and concepts, so many ideologies. We identify with some religion or philosophy. We identify with some political ideology. We identify with some lifestyle or intellectual interest. There are so many things that we have come to identify with. But all of these things are just additions to who and what we truly are. When we're alone, we might take the time to see through these false identifications. Who are you beyond your beliefs? Who are you without your associations? Who are you without your labels and categorizations? Who are you deep beneath it all? Who are you when there's no one else around to tell you who you are? When there is no one to compare with? When there is no one there to judge you, to evaluate you, to validate you? When there is no one to approve or disapprove? When all of that is put aside, what is left? Who are you? When we begin to discover who we are, and when we come to accept ourselves as we are, including all of those things that we have been led to believe are unacceptable, when we begin to appreciate ourselves, to value ourselves, to love and respect ourselves, everything changes. We no longer seek the approval of others. We no longer depend on anyone to validate us. We no longer need their acceptance or admiration because we know who we are and we accept ourselves fully, totally, and unconditionally. And all of this affects the way we interact and engage with others, because when we do find ourselves in the company of others, no longer seeking their approval, no longer caring what anyone thinks of us, we can simply be authentic, which means you're not putting on any sort of pretense. And you find that this affects all of your relationships. Certainly there will be those who don't approve of who you are, who won't accept you as you are, but you won't care. Their opinion won't matter. And if they reject you or dismiss you or walk away, you'll appreciate the gesture because you won't care to have such shallow associations. You aren't interested in superficial relationships. You're only interested in relationships with those who truly accept you just as you are, without you having to put on any sort of act. And your authenticity encourages others to be authentic as well. Just as you no longer care what others think of you, you also no longer judge others for their differences, for their flaws and imperfections. The more you accept yourself just as you are, the more accepting you are of others. And that becomes an invitation to others to drop their pretense, to remove their mask. And when there is authenticity in both you and the other, when there is true acceptance of one another, then there can be true intimacy, true connection. You can connect much more deeply with one another. And this makes all of your relationships much deeper, much stronger, much more fulfilling. So the time we spend alone, if we utilize that time properly, can be profoundly transformative. In that time, we can let go of so many illusions, so many unnecessary attachments, so much unneeded baggage. In that time, we can come to know and appreciate ourselves just as we are, and in doing so, we discover a deeper sense of tranquility and contentment. If you find value in this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.